Welcome to The Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky, a weekly podcast that breaks down politics, policy, and current affairs. I'm Becky Scherr.
And I'm Michael Brodkorb.
Today we have a shorter, more focused show to preview the upcoming presidential debate. On Thursday, June 27th, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will be going head-to-head in the first debate of the year. It is a historic moment, as it will be the first time in American history that two presidents will stand side by side on a debate stage. For this episode, we will break down how the debate will function and what we are hearing in the lead up to the big event. We will hit on debate prep, both from our experience and what debate prep looks like for Biden and Trump. We will break down what to expect from the two candidates and what spin we can anticipate afterwards. And be sure to come back on Friday for our post-debate recap, where we will break down Biden and Trump's performance and if our takes from this episode are right or not. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. We are coming to you this week, all things debate. So Thursday, June 27th at 8 p.m. Central, we will have the first presidential debate. It is a historic moment. It is the first matchup between two presidents, and it is just the two of them. It's going to be 90 minutes, hosted by Jake Tapper and Dana Bash from CNN. And it's going to be a little different than normal. There's no live audience. And that's one thing that I'm very interested to see. I feel like President Trump is somebody who certainly thrives off of that. And I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how it plays out. You're excited? You're going to watch?
I'm very excited. I'm very excited for the debate. Yes, I'm very excited. What was the giggle for? I'm excited. You're not going to watch
Well, because of course you're going to watch. Oh, yeah, of course I'm
Yes.
going to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think that this has the potential to be one of the most historic. It's two presidents, so that's of note. I think it has that type of momentum, opportunity, that type of all the ingredients to really shape and change the dynamics of the race. And so I think it has all the makings to be probably one of the most historic presidential debates that's ever happened, certainly in the last 20 some years. We can talk more about that, but I'm curious the structure of the debate. Let's go through that a bit. And the structure of the debate, I think, is quite interesting.
Absolutely. And first, it should be noted that typically there is the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates that manages the debate schedule for the year. Both campaigns wanted to go around that, and neither of them are under the Commission of Presidential Debates this year, who they've been managing since 1988. So that's also a new move. Biden's campaign had said he would not participate in those debates based on saying that they did not follow the rules or enforce the rules during the 2020 debates. So this time there is no opening statements. They're going to each have 2 minutes to answer. And the mute button, the lovely mute button, is going to be in effect. So they say microphones will be muted unless a candidate is directed to speak. And that, I have some thoughts on that. And my initial
Look,
thoughts on who does it hurt more? Because I think that there's benefits to President Trump, who maybe can't get himself into some trouble with some of the more eccentric remarks or huffs or sighs. But does it also hurt Trump because he can't rapid fire at Biden, get him flustered? Who do you think that benefits more, the mic, other than all of us, because we can actually maybe hear answers and get us actual good, structured, moderated debate? But do you think it hurts or helps one candidate over the other?
I think it helps Trump. I think it helps Trump because Trump, I think this is an election cycle. So let's set the table a bit. We've talked about the age of the candidates, and they're relatively close to each other in age. Biden is, of course, older. I would say to you, as being consistent, Biden is showing his age much more than I think Trump is, and he is a little bit older. I think this is an opportunity, I think, for Trump to come in. And in this particular instance, he's not the incumbent. I think that for him to come in, he went in aggressively at Biden in the last election cycle when he lost, and you and I both accept the context that he lost the election, and so I think he was very overpowering in that debate, in the debates that he had with Biden last cycle. And so I think him coming in with some restraint on how he will come across in terms of the limits in what he can say and do, the amount of interruptions, I think benefits him. I think it benefits Trump because he is still going to get an opportunity to talk. and he's going to have a lot of opportunity to show that style of him. But I think the fact that his campaign agreed to these parameters and the level of restrictions, I think is an indication on their campaign side that having him come across as restrained yet passionate, that he's coming through and he's showing exuberance and passion, but simultaneously being presidential, I think is an indication that that his campaign, that fact they accepted those terms, they agreed to them, I think is an indication that they needed to temper a bit some of his previous debate performances. So I think Trump, if he follows the rules, I think he will benefit from them. I will also say, even if he doesn't follow the rules, it's going to rile him up. It's going to rile up his supporters. So I think either way, I think Trump benefits from the rules. Your take?
Yeah, I like I said, I go back and forth. I think my fear for Trump is with 2 minutes to or 2-minute answers and not and having the cut mic so he isn't able to do those instantaneous retorts. My fear is that he's just going to sit there and scrabble down Biden said X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to take my time just to give smart ass remarks back to the different things and maybe not focus on what he actually should, because I feel like he's just going to be pent up when his time comes to speak, that it might just come flooding out. But I do largely think if they're doing debate prep, which we're going to chat about properly, that hopefully he is ready to focus on what he needs to focus on and be able to give well articulated, thought out responses. And we actually focus on the policy differences between these two men and less than on personality. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Sticking on the rules here, candidates are not allowed to bring any pre-written notes with them. This is also something that is a change. Very often they have binders or pieces of paper they can have their talking points or some things that reminders that they want during that. They will receive a pen and paper when they get on stage, as well as a bottle of water. They did a coin toss to determine podium positions and the order of closing statements. Biden's campaign won the coin toss, chose the podium to the viewer's right, and the Trump team chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. I like it.
I Yes, I would say this. I think that this, if you're, to me, this, the fact that, going back to what I said just a moment ago, the fact that the Trump campaign accepted these rules, accepted these restraints, accepted the conditions of this debate. To me, it means that they are acknowledging that their candidate would benefit from there being some level of corralling and some parameters on him, that they've made a calculation that's better for them. I still think that he will take full advantage of the debate. I do not expect that he will abide by all of the rules, and I don't think there's going to be any punishment or any criticism of him for not following the rules. I think the campaign's making a valiant effort to even try that. The question is, I think what the risk here, I think, is for Biden. I think that Trump has everything to gain in this debate, and I think that Biden has everything to lose. And just looking at the rules, I think they're set up in a way that I think both candidates can succeed. And ultimately, though, I only think one candidate can really fail. And I think that's Biden, because I think Trump, if he follows the rules, he looks somewhat presidential to the average, the people paying attention. Although, as we've discussed previously, not a ton of undecideds in this race. I don't think there's a ton of people that are going to make a determination based on what the debate performance is or what is said in the debate. And so I think if Trump follows the rules and he comes across presidentially wins, I think that if he operates outside the rules and has a Ronald Reagan like moment, I paid for this microphone type of scenario, I think his supporters love that energy and enthusiasm. I think if from an intensity level, if Biden comes across as disengaged or the enthusiasm level, I think that's where I think right now, I think of the two candidates, Trump and Biden, I think Trump has everything to gain. And it's tough for me to see a scenario where he doesn't come out one on one with Biden, a massive absence, some massive mistake. It's Biden that I think has a lot to lose. Just on the rules, just as we're discussing kind of the rules right now.
So you know how much I love to play devil's advocate. So there's been some criticism that the Trump side and Republicans as a whole have spent so much time hammering down on President Biden's acumen, his mental fitness, his fitness for office, all of that, that if he were to come out and simply be a coherent, well-spoken president, that he comes out on top because there's just a farther the Republicans have been, or the Trump campaign have been hammering this so hard that as long as he doesn't stumble or have some major health, God forbid, some major breakdown, that as long as he's the Joe Biden we saw at the State of the Union, perhaps he is a winner there.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
I'll agree with
Yeah.
that.
But I think, like you said, the rules of what I think is going to be interesting is the mute button, right? So as we're told, it is they are going to be muted unless they are asked or directed to speak. I can certainly see President Trump's trying to talk loudly enough to be picked up by his opponent's microphone, and that could certainly be the case. But I feel like he's going to be forced to follow the rules. And to your point, I think that does benefit his overall, as long as he can get some messages apart and get his zingers in there. And as long as Biden, even if he is just a simple, coherent president, I do think that Trump kind of can exceed expectations or meet expectations of having a good debate.
I don't think a mute button is going to deter him. Absent them being in some type of quiz show tube, some kind of glass partition where you can't hear them, like on a game show, I think Trump will be heard. I think he'll his microphone will be, even when it's off, it'll be audible from, Biden's microphone.
Agreed.
I do think the one curveball, the real curveball is the lack of audience, because I think Trump feeds off that audience. I
100%.
don't believe Biden does. I don't believe Biden needs that. And in some ways, I would say to you that I think Biden's speech pattern, particularly that he, can sometimes get tripped up as he is a stutterer. I wonder sometimes with the crowd and the spontaneity, that can sometimes it can sometimes trip him up a bit, and so I think Trump really feeds off the crowd,
Mhm.
and I think that it's a very interesting it'll be very interesting to discuss in the aftermath when we discuss this more, what the not having an audience means, because I think that's ultimately the biggest curveball, is not having an audience, because I think Trump just feeds off that. Not to say that Biden doesn't either. All politicians feed off the crowd, but Trump is it's just his energy that he needs, and not having that. Be very curious to see how he comes across without him playing to the crowd.
And to your point, I do think that Biden performs better when it is a one-on-one interview or things that are a little bit more structured. I think that he, like you said, he gets frazzled, which who doesn't? If you start to stumble and then you look out and you see all of these people looking back at you, it will certainly be a good part of conversation after, which we're going to do, of course, a post-debate recap and chat about all things. I have been interested to see the lead up from the campaigns to this week. Trump's team is already taking aim at the moderators. We saw an interview with his spokeswoman on with CNN's Cassie Hunt. She did get cut off because while Cassie was trying to say, "How is Trump preparing? What are you expecting?" The spokeswoman from the Trump campaign did decide to just sit there and hammer on Jake Tapper and bash and how they've treated Trump in the past. After getting cut off from that interview, she wrote, CNN cutting off my microphone for bringing up debate moderators. History of anti Trump lies just proves our point that President Trump will not be treated fairly in Thursday's debate. Yet President Trump is still willing to go into this 3-on-1 fight to bring his winning message to the American people, and he will win. So that right there, that's an angle that they're playing already ahead of time. If it comes out, like you said, nice and easy, everybody gets their time, rules are followed, he looks like a bigger man than he's expected or thought to be. And if not, they're setting the stage that this is a 3-on-1 fight and President Trump still battled through. I do want to chat though about debate prep. So you and I have been in situations working on speech prep, debate prep. It is certainly typically a very long, drawn out days, a lot of mock debates, talking points, having experts come in, all of the. So, want to throw it to you here to maybe chat a little bit about what we're seeing in debate prep or what we're anticipating they're doing.
I have not worked on a presidential race, but I've done a debate prep for statewide candidates, and I've done it at congressional district levels years and years ago. I love debate prep. I love debate prep. Doing research and communications years and years ago, it was really fun to do. Debate prep can be, and I've observed and listened to what the presidential campaigns are doing right now because there's been some discussion on that. I think it's a couple things on the debate prep. Both sides are taking it seriously. Biden has been away from the White House. He's been at Camp David. Trump has, by all accounts, doing much more debate prep because I think the rules, require much more work because of the no audience and the rules that we've articulated. And so debate prep is fascinating because at the level in which I did it years ago, you're working with some candidates and sometimes incumbents who are preparing for debates. Some of them would be televised. And so you'd have discussions on questions and how do you stand and how do you look and where do you go and how do you hold their hands, and you do all this type of prep. You go through every decision. When I first campaign I worked on was Boschwitz's race in 96 against Wellstone. And it was the first campaign that I was involved with debate prep. And it was just fascinating. I just love there was a debate at KMSP, Old Fox 9. And I remember just being involved with working with the Wellstone campaign, the Boschwitz campaign, working through the communications director at the Boschwitz campaign, just on that debate prep. And you get into layout and who stands where and how people are going to, be addressed, and passing out tickets because there was an audience. You were able to pass out some tickets and have some people there in the audience. But the main thing I remember about debate prep, having done it, long ago, was just the fatigue because it's getting to a point where you want the candidate to absorb as much as they can information, but you don't want it to be them to be super saturated. You want them to have some level. You don't want to fill them up with too much. And there can be times where a candidate can be too prepared, where you can be too rigid and you can't allow for that spontaneity of things that happen. Debates are very nerve wracking, particularly having been done research in comms years ago in that kind of capacity. Every word that the candidate says, but also what the opponent is saying, is so critically important. And coming up with those one liners, coming up with those zingers. It's interesting, a lot of the presidential debates that have happened and some of the vice presidential debates that I've seen over the years, those type of experiences really ingrain in to debate prep. I think the Michael Dukakis 88 debate, when he was asked in an opening debate about his wife being a crime happening against her, and it was very personal. The question was very personal, and he had a very robotic answer. Is one of the examples of how is one of the debate examples that I've had discussions with candidates about that type of intimate personal question that can be thrown to them and how they need to answer in a non-robotic way, how they need to not just they have to recognize that they're human beings, and other things that can happen in debates. I remember George Herbert Walker Bush looking at his watch, and it was like it gave the impression that he had somewhere else to go. Al Gore sighing during the debate. Mannerisms, what people do, how they come across. It's so fascinating. I love debates. I love the debate prep. I think the main thing I would say is all that behind the scenes has to end up with the candidate going on stage and being able to talk and present a message. And so the balance is, how do you prepare them without over preparing them? How do you still retain the character and who they are? And it's a fun process. And I love doing it, again, as I said, years ago.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite things too. One that I really remember is 2014. I worked on Mike McFadden's race against Senator Al Franken at the time. And I think a lot of people don't anticipate or maybe just realize how much of that prep is not just on the policy and issues and talking points in research, but is, like you said, on the mannerisms and how you stand. And if you're conversing with a female moderator versus a male moderator, and there's different things that you need to take into account, how you have your face, and if you're you want to make sure you're making facial expressions, but not too much, or the eye roll, or the looking at the watch. All of that stuff is just fascinating that really goes into that. And you got to have some of those prepared zingers and different things you want to try to get in, which especially when it comes to presidential, is very largely message tested. And they have those things in their pocket that they want to get out there. It is interesting that with not having the notes that they're allowed, that they have to recollect all of those things of making, they don't even can't come to stage with their five zingers written out.
Yeah, and I would say that some of the and I'm sure someone will correct me about this, but I think some of the most significant debate moments have been not necessarily policy points, but have been human interactions and things that have happened. You think about the fly on Mike Pence's head. You think about, again, as I discussed, George Herbert Walker Bush looking at his watch. I'm thinking about the '88 vice presidential debate between Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle, where Benson got in a zinger on him. Again, the Dukakis '88 kind of robotic answer of Michael Dukakis, Al Gore sighing, those type of moments. We really remember, I think, those interactions. Trump being very aggressive in his physical stance near Hillary Clinton when they were running in 16. Those are the type of moments that I think, and that's very, I think, difficult for staffers to prepare for because you can only do so much. You can only do so much in terms of getting your candidate prepared. But if they walk out on stage and a guy's barn door is down, you can't prep for that, or his tie is off, or something is amiss, or there's a button that's off or something. I remember watching those, and I remember watching the debates that I was prepping for. My goodness, I said, just make sure your zipper's up and make sure your ties straight. And you go through all that type of stuff, and it's just who's the most stressed during the debate is not the candidates, it's the staff in the room. I bet you the blood pressure is probably just off the charts because you're just sitting there. And I remember back then just being like watching this and being like, oh my gosh, this is just, but that's what you live for. Debates are some of the absolute best nights because these candidates are going to be going at each other. And this is one of the few moments they're going to be in the same room and they're going to be interacting and talking with each other. And that's just an incredibly significant moment.
Two comments on this real quick too. As staff, especially again back in 2014, we often also were doing rapid response the entire time you're watching it. You have all of these social posts, these tweets prepped. You have fact versus fiction press releases. So that your candidate says something, you send out a release to the press backing that up. The opponent, they're going to spin something. You have different things to hammer that. And so it's stressful, it's addicting, it's fun, it's chaos, but it is truly just a kind of a wild time. What I think is gonna be is interesting of what we've been seeing about the Trump debate prep here. He's still fully campaigning this week, whereas Biden's been up at Camp David, really focused just on this. As you mentioned, he is preparing a lot more. 2 minutes is a lot of time. And I think that's one thing in a lot of the debates, especially if we look back at the presidential, which are the primary presidential debates that we saw with a ton of more candidates. They obviously can't allow 2 minutes, but we very often see 60 or 90 minutes. 2 minutes is a lot of time for them to say a lot of things, but also get themselves into trouble when they're trying to fill that time. And so it's going to be interesting. They have to be prepared fully for that. Trump's been bringing in policy experts and advisors in between his rallies and fundraisers. And so that he is certainly getting in on the issues, making sure he chats through everything, knows all the know-how, so he can hopefully be policy forward. The Hill reported this week that Senate Republicans are urging Trump to tone down his personal attacks. I think they really know that there is a lot to benefit if you focus on the miscomings, the shortcomings of the Biden administration. And I think they're really hoping that is something that then can also lead for Republicans down ticket as they're on the campaign trail. But Trump at his campaign rallies has been talking a lot about these debates. A couple quotes I have here is at a recent rally, he said, how should I handle him? Should I be tough and nasty? Should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak? And I feel like this is a stream of consciousness for him. I really think that Trump is probably battling where he falls on that spectrum.
Yes, I would agree with you because I think it's very interesting. I was as I As we were prepping for this and as I was reading more about it, the change in the debate rules are just so significant. And as you articulated so well, his commentary right now in the campaign and listening to some of pundits and others who are close to the process, that Trump is there is a little bit more of an unconventional debate prep. I think both campaigns, as I said, are taking it seriously, but I can see how this can be a struggle for him. So what's interesting about Joe Biden is he's been in office for so long. He is such a strong debater. He's this is his environment. This is good. I think what's interesting is, as you pointed out, that State of the Union intensity. If he comes out and with that in intensity, I think that's a win for him. I do think that's a win for him. I think it's going to be. I think Trump is clearly struggling a little bit with kind of which way should I go, because the rules are very constrained, and I'll be very interested to see how if I'm gonna maybe amend my answer a little bit because on who could win in this, because if this debate structure makes Trump come across, if he's not comfortable, I think that could change some things. And so I'll be very curious because there are a lot of constraints on him in terms of his debate style. And my assumption was if the campaigns agree to it, that must mean that he's okay with it because I think he ultimately runs the campaign. But if it makes him not comfortable, that could change some things. And I think that's something I'm going to amend my answer a little bit, not because you were being the devil's advocate, which you always do a great job of being a devil's advocate, but that could change because as I'm just thinking this out a little bit, what's important is the candidates are authentic and that they can communicate that. And again, with there being such a small number of undecideds, I think that this is somewhat show. I just don't know. I'd be very curious. We've talked a little bit about it, the kind of the deciders, as they're calling them, as you pointed out in our last episode, the deciders of this race. Be very curious how this will factor into the deciders because it's going to be interesting because I think, and so the fact that the Trump campaign agreed to these rules, it'll be very curious if I'll be curious to see if he will succeed in these rules. I guess I'll say it that way. And the debate prep shows, as you very well articulated, that it appears he's struggling a bit. And that's not good, I don't think. I don't think it's good to be coming into a debate and not know what you're going to do. Now, some of that is theater. He's building anticipation. I think he's also trying to get as much as that crowd because he's going to walk in. He's going to walk. I mean, he's such a circus carnival, whatever they carny, like running the ringmaster, whatever you call it. And so he's building enthusiasm. He's a showman for the debate. But we'll see. I think it's going to be. I think again. I'll state this again. I think this has all of the makings to be the most monumental presidential debate in the last 50 years.
Agreed. And I do want to continue on this conversation about what we're expecting to see, especially when it comes to personality. I want to start here by giving one more quote that the former president shared recently and then chat about what we expect with Biden's personality and how he's going to present himself. President Donald Trump suggested Biden would be given a little cocaine before to enhance his debate performance. He on stage said, so a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass. He'll come out all jacked up. Whatever happened to all that cocaine that was missing a month ago? Now, again, he's being funny, he's being facetious, but it is a out there claim. I think, as we talked about it, is his State of the Union performance. But gotta love Donald Trump for accusing the sitting president of doing cocaine to perform at a debate.
Yes, and I will. If I remember, we had said that in the lead up to the State of the Union, that's the kickoff to the presidential race. Firstly, Biden's campaign. And if my memory is correct, we thought Biden did a great job in terms of
Right.
showing his enthusiasm. And I distinctly remember saying, whatever he took, whatever kept, because I was exhausted. I had to stay away. Could barely stay awake. And if that's, I think Trump is adding some specter to, I think it goes along with the narrative. The
Right.
narrative is that is slipping, that there are some issues. And so throwing a charge of a candidate taking cocaine, boy, oh boy, it never ceases to amaze me.
Advisors have said that they're looking for Biden to appear as the adult in the room, be a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more purposeful, in the hopes that Trump is a little more on the fiery versus calm side of things. In a memo, they put out that they see this as an opportunity to highlight President Biden's record and vision for the 4 years, contrasting with what President Trump has done, and then really hammer home the Trump's track record during his presidency, and of course, the remarks on the campaign trail, and we'll get into issues that we expect them to chat or to discuss at the debate here shortly. But one of President Trump's communications director wrote that the American people will see two different visions for the future on the stage in Atlanta. Biden's vision, where freedoms are protected and all Americans have a fair shot, and Donald Trump's dark vision, where he will serve as a dictator on day one, give tax cuts to the ultra wealthy on the backs of the middle class, and rip away women's rights. I mean, that right there pretty much sums up what the Biden campaign has planned going into this. And if I was working on their campaign, that seems like a really the keys to a winning message if he's able to execute.
Yes, I think both campaigns are bracketing this as much as they can red meat to their base and energize them.
And for those who don't know, bracketing is on the front end and back end of events, how campaigns prep and prepare to emphasize and make what happens in the middle, like this debate, better. We also have Biden that they're preparing for two different Trumps. They have the bombastic, unhinged one, for, as this article said, one known for his grievance filled, stem winding rallies and his fairly, oh, and they're also preparing for fairly disciplined version who largely refrains from tirades and sticks to policy. I have to imagine what I've read and what I know from my past campaigns and debate prep, if Trump comes out calm, Biden's gonna poke him. He is going to try. I wouldn't be surprised. I saw one article say that loser is the word that they think, looking at Trump's past performances and what really triggers him. Loser is a word that apparently is a trigger point. Biden, it seems, is going to try to needle him a little bit to elicit some response and fire him up. I have to say again, peeling back the curtain a little bit, when I worked on the McFadden campaign, Al Franken was known as a fiery individual, and that was something that was definitely part of the strategy, is if you could get under his skin and throw him off kilter a little bit. And so I think that's certainly gonna be something to see. If Trump doesn't come out guns blazing, they're gonna try to get him there.
Yes, I would agree. I would also say that I'd be very I think it's I think it's I think it's gonna be difficult for Trump. I would be surprised if on when we're discussing this on Friday, if I th would say that I thought Trump was calm the entire evening. I think he's just incapable of that.
Agree.
I don't think I don't think it's his style. I think that he will needs there to be a conflict. I think that he is incapable of having the debate be anything else. There has to be some personal attacks in there. There will be some personal attacks. He will attempt it simply because he knows he's playing to a crowd that's not there. People are watching the internet's on the computer now, so people are going to see this as it happens. And even if there's not an audience there, he will play to them. And I think that's going to lead to there's going to have to be some fiery moment. I do not believe I do not believe that if the Trump campaign has made the calculation that and you had some discussion about senators not talking about the personal attacks and stuff like this, plus coupled with the rules. I have a very difficult time thinking that Donald Trump believes that he needs to act more like a politician to get elected. I think that he's at a point in his career where he's going to do exactly what he wants to do in the way he wants to do it. And I think that means that's going to lead towards him. There's going to be some personal shots. There's going to be some rule violations. You're absolutely, I think, going to hear him on the microphone, even when his microphone's not on. And I think that I'd be very surprised. The word that we use to describe Donald Trump on Friday is calm. I'm always prepared to be wrong, but I'll be surprised if we lead with, he was really calm.
I agree. There's gotta be a mix of it, and even if it's for nothing more than Donald Trump gets the game of politics. He knows that he needs some one liners that they can cut and clip and raise their money off of and rally the troops and get the ground game going. He knows that's a big part of his success. And so he knows that he needs to have X, Y, and Z set in line so they can clip it, they can put it out. They're going to raise. I'm really interested to see what their fundraising numbers are going to be in the 24, 48 hours after this debate as well. But there's no way he can resist. And again, with 2 minutes, that's where I feel like he's just going to be baited. He's going to answer the question for 60 seconds, and then he's going to spend 60 seconds just zinging them back, lobbing them back, whether relevant or not, at President Biden. We'll see how that goes. I do want to chat through a couple of the anticipated issues that we expect to come up. A list that I found, some put together, some what I economy, immigration, Ukraine, Israel, abortion, and of course legal battles, both Trump and Hunter Biden's. Any other ones that you anticipate being big topics of the night?
I'd be very curious. I think you know those are the issues. I think there's gonna be a lot of I think the legal battles I think is gonna be and as you've done before, it'd be great when we talk about this on Friday is to see the percentage of time that's dedicated to each of us. My bet is that enter back and forth on legal issues is I think gonna take a fair amount of time up in that debate. Certainly certain time that should be dedicated to more substantive issues, but I have just a very difficult time thinking that this is going to be an issue-based debate. I just don't think that I think that CNN wants that. I think it's noble of them to want this to be that way. But I just don't think that this presidential race is going to be a discussion on on issues. I think that I think the issue that I think is going to be the most motivating issue, I think in this election is going to be abortion. I still believe that's going to be of the all the issues that I think are going to drive this election cycle in terms of motivating. I think it's going to be the economy, and I think it's going to be abortion. If the Republicans can motivate on the economy and win over people on the economy and how they feel about that, I think that's going to be critical for them in order to mobilize their base. I think the Democrats are going to focus a lot on abortion and talking about those issues and talk about what Trump wants to do. I also think a good portion of the debate of this cycle is going to be on legal issues and personalities. Trump is going to be dealing with stuff. He's gonna come out and he's gonna go after Hunter Biden. And so I think legal issues, personalities is also going to be a big issue in this race.
I agree. I do believe that there's going to be a significant portion of Thursday night's debate focused on the legal battles. I do think that with the rules and the makeup, and if they're able to manage it properly, that it is trying to be a very issue forward debate. I think that there's so many different things that I think there are to talk about. Obviously, I think abortion, like you said, is certainly going to be one. I think Israel is just at the Israel Hamas conflict, and I think that there's a lot of pressure on President Biden when it comes to that issue and how he's conducting himself. And I'm sure he has that answer prepped in a nice little bow to regurgitate how he's practiced it, because that is one where he could get into a lot of trouble. And then immigration, I really think with the border issues, and we're seeing a little bit more from the left coming over with some regulations there, I do really think it will be interesting to see if the goal that it appears to be from CNN and for this debate to have it be issue based, if it's able to be that way. Because as we know, also that we have to anticipate that the moderators are ready to let the candidate or let the debate go where it may based on how the presidents are responding and how they're interacting and really follow up questions along that way. I'm hopeful that we're going to get a good issue based debate, but very excited to see how these men conduct themselves and the answers they give.
I Where I think it's gonna deviate from the policy is on the flashpoints, because one of the things is that we discussed this a bit already is, you know, Biden using the loser comment to Trump. I don't think Biden's gonna lead with the loser. I just don't think that's his style. I'm not to say that he's
Mhm.
better or worse than that, but I just don't think that's his style. We can obviously check the tape when we discuss this later in the week. I have a feeling that's gonna come in response to something if he does that. And so I think it's gonna deviate very quickly into that. And so I think the moderators I think are gonna work very hard, I think, to keep it focused on policy. But when we get into the legal battles, when we get into what Trump's going through, what Hunter's going through, and those types of attacks, I think that's Trump's bread and butter. I also will say to you that I have never felt that Donald Trump is a strong policy or intellectual debater. I think Biden can be and is very much understands having based on his life experiences. And it's the real contrast of the two candidates is that Biden has spent his entire professional career in politics, in the government, and Trump has not as much. And so I think there's just a depth of knowledge. And so I don't think Trump's strong suit is policy. And so I think balancing that out in the debate, I think all candidates have their reset mode or where they go to when they need to push back and their home base. And some of that times that's policy. People can be very intellectual. I think Biden can be that way. I think Trump's is not. And so I think it's going to be a contrast on those issues. I will also say, as much as I think Biden is much more, I think, focused on policy, a policy, I don't know if it's gonna win the race.
Mhm.
I think there's some I don't think this is he talks about abortion, he talks about some matters related to the economy on Trump's side, but I think what's really gonna get these candidates going at each other is not a substantive policy debate. I think where this debate and I got to applaud CNN for trying to set it up that way, and I hope that it is. But ultimately, in terms of moving the dial, I just don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to wait and see what the response is, but I just don't know how many people are sitting back and saying about a policy discussion if that's where they're still making a decision. I still think that the decision on who they're gonna go with is gonna come down to temperament and judgment. And so if when you get into those personal type of attacks, that's where I think more of it's gonna go on. Again, I'll just keep repeating myself. This is gonna be such a fascinating debate on so many levels. I'm so excited. I haven't been this excited since probably the '88 debate when I was 15. I was 14 years old.
I have to say I did not watch the '88 debate. I don't think it's much of an audience of 2-year-olds, but I'm glad you
Ooh.
liked it.
Oh,
I am
I'm
very
doing the math there.
yeah. I too am very excited. It's gonna be great. I'm excited to chat about it after the fact and see what Trump we get, what Biden we get, how they interact with each other, and how they answer their questions. If there's any major flubs or chaos that comes out, time will tell, and we'll be waiting with bated breath. Stay tuned for our recap.
And post-debate spin.
Post debate spin. Oh, yes. We didn't even chat about that. Here I am ready to wrap it up. Post debate spin. I think that is going to be I think we're gonna see the stuff that we already talked about. We're gonna see from my perspective, we're gonna see Trump's campaign come out and hammer the structure, hammer the moderators, the network, that it was 3 against 1, that he did what he was supposed to do, and that Biden's unfit for office. I really think that is 90% of what we're going to see coming out of that debate. And I think that President Biden's campaign, what I would anticipate them seeing is Trump is unhinged, he's fiery, he is also unfit for office. That if you get Trump, you're obviously what they're prepping this for is you're going to get a dictator. Your rights are going to be taken away, women's rights are going to be especially impacted, and that he is going to come in not having another election behind him, and he is going to be a dictator versus somebody who is working to better lives for all Americans.
Yes,
What's
I
your
will say yes. I will say to you, what I think one of the things that's changed, at least in the last 20, 30 some years, is the formalization of the post-debate spin. It used to be much more informal. Now they have spin rooms and they all congregate and they just make it accessible for easy. So the post-debate spin is really important. I would say to you that how this debate is going to be framed up. In some instances, I would say that the debate is can sometimes be secondary to the spin operation in the aftermath because what the reporters are going to do and the campaigns are going to do is try to find the nugget or two and then they're going to want to push and it's going to be it's a great I would recommend people if they want to get an understanding of what a campaign spin room is like is to watch the movie The War Room about the 92 campaign where you really get into the Clinton Gore and the Bush Quayle and 92 race. It's just absolutely fascinating. It's a great movie. You can see how spin works and spin happens and spin is formulated in a post debate quick manner and the frenzied nature of it. But the spin is going to be important because again, The Biden campaign is going to come up with 2 or 3 points that they're going to want to make. The Trump campaign is going to want to come up with 2 or 3 points. And then the media is going to have to be sold on those. And so you're going to have this jostling afterwards. I also will say that I think that, and I'm not one to compliment the Trump campaign very often, but I think that they are doing, unfortunately, I think they're doing as good of a job as they can to kind of taint the jury pool prior to this debate. They're already trying to set expectations. And it's unfortunate. I don't agree with it, but I know it works for their base. And so the communications director are going out there and firing shots at CNN right away. They're just setting the table
Mhm.
they're setting expectations. And it works for them. I wish it didn't work for them as much as they do it, but so be it. I'm not a Trump supporter, so be interesting to see. But I think the pre-debate work is being done and the post-debate to spin, I think is going to be fantastic.
And we'll certainly, as we watch that post debate to spin, what we see immediately following with the campaign staff from either side going on the networks and what we see on social media, we'll certainly get a good view, good window into what they're trying to push, what they're trying to accomplish after the fact, and if there's any messes that they're trying to clean up, because maybe we have a binder full of women moment or something else really fun that these campaigns have to go try to clean up. I'm more excited than I probably should be about this, to be perfectly honest.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I got to stay up late. I'm so excited. I just
Let's
love
talk about that
debates.
for a second. This debate is 9 p.m. Central or 9 p.m. Eastern. These are two men in their late 70s, early 80s. That is late. I go to bed typically by 9:30. This is certainly something that time is gonna play a role. I heard that the Biden campaign was asking for stools behind the podium. From what I understand, that was declined. Again, 90 minutes for anybody standing up under hot lights in this scenario. It's a pressure cooker. I would wanna sit down in 90 minutes. So there are so many other little things in play with how the performance of these two men is, what they're how they're gonna perform.
I do think age is a factor in this race. Harkening back on the '84 debate between Mondale and Reagan, where age was a factor in that race, and it became a great moment for Reagan in the race. Talking about the youth and inexperience of Vice President Walter Mondale at the time, and it was just a great moment in the debate. I do think age is will be a factor in this debate. But what I've said to you before is, I understand that Biden's older, but within a few years, and I think Trump comes across of the two, he comes across more engaged. He
Mhm.
comes across more vibrant, more that doesn't mean I agree with 1/1000th of what's coming out of his mouth, and I absolutely believe that the amount of issue that Biden is having, Trump is having too. But in terms of which candidate is showing their age more, I think Biden does. And so I think on the from the age perspective, from the enthusiasm and intensity perspective, I think Biden has a much higher expectation that he shows enthusiasm and the fact that he can stay awake and I mean that respectfully, because I would be taking a nap right now if I
Mhm.
had to be up for 90 minutes on stage standing on a Thursday. I would be going to bed right now.
Um, okay, last question here. Over, under, do you think Trump calls him Sleepy Joe more or less than 7 times?
Um,
I just pulled that
Less than
number
7
out.
times.
11
How about
interesting.
how about you?
It's late. I think he's gonna be right there. 7 or above is I'm gonna go with.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
we got
I
a
mean, it's
silent
like
here now.
prime. He loves the Sleepy Joe, plus it's late. He's gonna have a long blank or a blank stare, and he's gonna I
Yeah,
expect it.
that's a good one. We'll watch that. We'll do a count on Sleepy Joe comments.
I'm excited
And
for the debate and our recap.
I'm very excited to thank you for doing it this week, and we'll be back again with a new episode on Friday, recapping the debate.
Woohoo! Bye.
Bye. We want to thank you for listening to the breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on the platform where you listen. You can also leave a review or give us a shout out on our website or across all social media platforms at BB Breakpod. The breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky will return this week with a post presidential debate bonus episode. Thank you for listening today.